It was a rainy autumn evening, but not one of those cozy ones where you feel comfortable and secure. Quite the opposite. I was still tense from my exhausting day at work. The only thing I had been looking forward to today was snuggling up on the sofa with my husband in the evening and falling asleep in his arms while watching a mediocre crime thriller. But when I arrived, he wasn't there yet. He should be here any moment now, though. I was in the process of making myself a cup of tea when I suddenly heard footsteps outside the kitchen window. Finally, I thought. Then I hesitated. It sounded like more than one person. 2, maybe 3. I stared out of the kitchen window towards the street, but in the darkness of our front yard, I couldn't see anything. If it wasn't my husband, then who could it be? Hopefully, it wasn't burglars. As quietly as I could, I tiptoed into the hallway. I picked up the baseball bat that my husband had placed there for self-defense and proceeded towards the door. Carefully, I placed my hand on the cold doorknob when suddenly the doorbell rang. The sound was so loud and unexpected that I jerked my hand away in surprise. Who would ring our doorbell shortly after 11? And in this rain? Could it be a murderer? I had heard before that murderers and rapists would ring doorbells at night, give a reason why they needed to come inside, like needing to use the bathroom urgently or their phone battery being dead, and then attack once the door was closed behind them. Oh, Susie, you're being too paranoid again, I thought. But what if I wasn't? Another ring made me flinch. Should I open the door? Could it be something important? I tightened my grip on the baseball bat and gathered my courage. Through a narrow crack in the slightly open door, I peered outside. Yes, please. Then I froze. There were indeed 2 people standing at the front door, but they weren't murderers, and certainly not rapists. They were 2 children, a boy and a girl, surely no older than 12. The girl was crying. They were completely drenched. "Can you please let us in? We would like to make a quick phone call," the boy said calmly. I looked at him with surprise. A feeling of unease washed over me. There was something strange about the children. Nevertheless, I opened the door fully and set the baseball bat aside. "What's wrong? Why are you out alone at night in this weather? Where are your parents?" I asked. "We want to call them." "A strange man was following us," the boy replied. But there was no hint of panic in his voice, unusual for such a shy boy. He kept his head down the whole time, but spoke completely normally. The girl was still crying. Without thinking further, I took out my phone from my pocket. "What's your phone number?" I asked, crouching down so that the children wouldn't feel intimidated. The boy lowered his head even further, as if avoiding my gaze. Then he shook his head. "We want to call our parents ourselves," he said with a determined, almost commanding tone. Somewhat puzzled, I held out my phone to the boy, but he made no move to take it. "No, the landline phone," the girl suddenly said. She had stopped crying, but still looked down. "Don't you know the area code? I can tell you, and then you just have to enter the number," I replied, confused. "Just let us in," the boy said sternly. The uneasy feeling inside me grew stronger. "Can we maybe use the bathroom quickly?" the boy asked. "Or have a drink," the girl added. Why did these 2 children insist on coming into my house? Were they just cold, or was this some kind of trick? I glanced stealthily down the street. There was nothing unusual to see. Not a single soul standing or walking in the rain. Not even a car I didn't recognize. "If you wait a moment, I can bring you something to drink. But I really can't let you inside the house," I replied. "Now let us in," the girl commanded persistently. At that moment, both children looked up simultaneously. Startled, I stumbled back. Where their eyes should have been, there were pitch black holes. Upon closer inspection, I noticed that the holes were actually their eyes. They lacked any shine, any color, no reflection. Not even a tiny bit of white could be seen. Without saying another word, I slammed the door shut. Then I hurried and grabbed the baseball bat. I sat with my back against the door, as if my body could further prevent it from being opened. I would never let those children, or whatever they were, into the house. The ringing hit me like a blow. Hadn't I made it clear to the children that I wouldn't let them in? But they didn't stop there. No, it turned into a storm of constant ringing. I sat there motionless, gripping the baseball bat so tightly that my knuckles turned white. Why wouldn't the children go away? As if they had read my thoughts. The ringing suddenly stopped. Uncertain, I turned to the door. I listened. No footsteps could be heard from outside. Were the children still there? I cautiously stood up. Then I blocked the door with my foot. When I blocked the door with my foot, allowing it to open only a crack, and peered outside. The children were gone. I breathed a sigh of relief. Now all that was left was for my husband to come home, and I could forget all of this. Still quite agitated, I strolled back to the kitchen. My tea had become lukewarm by now. I drank it anyway, trying to calm myself down. Nervously, I glanced at the clock. It was already 11:30. My husband should be home by now. I was already considering going to bed, but I knew I wouldn't be able to close my eyes alone. Then, suddenly, I heard a sound from the hallway. I didn't move an inch, even held my breath. If it wasn't my husband. "Honey, I'm home," a familiar voice echoed. Relieved, I jumped up. I was already in the hallway when I froze in my tracks. My husband wasn't alone. These two were hanging around in the driveway. Can you believe it? In this rain? "Anyway, they want to use our phone for a moment," he said, gesturing towards the two children. It almost felt like a dream. I woke up to my dog, Lucy, barking. She was upright on the bed where my husband and I were sleeping with our 22-month-old daughter, staring at our door like an unknown stranger was out there rummaging around. I thought she was just freaking out over a house noise. We'd only had her for 3 months, and she was still a puppy. It could have been anything. Our roommate, a creak from the house settling, the awnings moving outside in the breeze. I wasn't too concerned initially. I decided the best bet would be to open the door and show her nothing was there. It sounds a bit silly, but it's what we do with our daughter when she gets scared, and I figured it should work with a puppy too. I opened the door and she raced to the front door. She stood there, snarling at the door. It was an angry, violent growl, one I had never heard her make before. I looked groggily at her and opened the baby gate, blocking the doorway. Planning to open the door and show her everything was okay. One was just a smidgen shorter than me and didn't look much younger. I'm 21, and she looked to be 16 or 17. She was slender and pale. Her hair was a light shade of honey blonde, and she wore it long, about mid-back, with long, thin, blunt bangs in the front that covered most of her eyes. She wore jeans, a light wash that's popular right now, and a thin-looking olive-colored pullover-style hoodie. She held the hand of a small girl who looked to be around 3 or 4 in the same style jeans and a buttoned-down ivory cardigan. The smaller one looked at the floor shyly, but had the same shade of hair, tied back in a ponytail. She held a stuffed toy under her free arm, and it was identical to one my daughter has, as was their style of dress. Had it not been for the feeling of overwhelming dread and fear, I probably would have asked these children in and given them some tea or hot chocolate to get them out of the bitter cold. Something about them seemed off. At this point, I hadn't made any noise. I hadn't shushed the dog or grumbled, nothing. I hadn't turned on any lights. These kids had no indicators. I was at the door. The older one spoke. She had a voice that was mature, confident, strong, and accentless. She held her head tilted downward, and I couldn't see her eyes. She said, "We have to use your phone." I stood frozen in fear. How did she know I was there? She raised her head to face me directly, and that was when I saw her eyes. There was a reason I couldn't see them through her bangs before. They were black, or midnight blue, or a dark, dark purple. They were otherworldly, she said. "Our mother is worried." As someone who has always been interested in creepy stories, I knew what she was the second she looked at me through the door. I have never been one to believe in these things. As a staunch atheist and skeptic when it comes to the paranormal, I had written off many a ghost story from friends and family members, eager to tell their tale. I didn't believe it. Still, I couldn't rationalize my way out of this. I was standing with nothing but a thin wooden door between me and a black-eyed kid. There was no questioning what was right in front of me. I did not answer her. Slowly and silently, I backed away from the door, Lucy still cowering at my ankles. She kept talking. "Just let us in to use your phone." I took another step back, and with that step, the tone changed. At first, she seemed polite. When I took that second step back, she became commanding, almost hostile. "We're not going to hurt you. If we wanted to do that, we would have broken in." "I'll ask again. May we come in and use your phone?" Lucy snarled at the door, and I inched backward, though something inside me seemed to be slowly pulling me back toward the door. It wasn't a physical pulling so much as a subconscious need to go back and let them in. I got to my room, covered up the window, locked the door, and sat there in the dim light of the nightlight. I heard her call me back to the door once more, and then quiet. I didn't go back to sleep that night, and I haven't slept right since. I know from reading about them that Becks can't just come in without permission. I know they haven't hurt anyone, but I still fear I'll be the exception. When I told my husband, he said it was just a dream. He keeps telling me to forget it, but this lingering feeling of sadness, this dread when the house is silent at night, this fear of a knock at the door, this tells me otherwise. Dear followers, I am pleased to announce my channel, Midnight Macabre, where you will find an exciting collection of horror stories. If you are a fan of thrills and suspense, this channel is specially designed for you. You will enjoy a unique and terrifying experience as I share chilling tales that will take you on a journey into the world of mystery and nightmares. Expect captivating details, creepy characters, and a focus on storytelling to stimulate your imagination and leave a lasting impression. I am eager to hear your feedback and suggestions regarding the stories and additional content you would like to see on the channel. Please subscribe to Midnight Macabre. Please subscribe to Midnight Macabre and activate notifications to be the first to receive the latest terrifying stories. Thank you very much for your support and participation in this haunting adventure. I look forward to seeing all of you on my channel. Best regards, Midnight Macabre.